Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Folks, this week, or at least in this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about correcting imbalance. Now, before you click off, this isn't a finger pointing, session. So this is an awareness. Just be aware of these things, kind of a session. All right. So when you're watching this, like we often do, right? We on the journey to transform culture, oftentimes we'll jump in talking about organizations because why? Well, we more often gather there than anywhere else to be a team, right? But that doesn't mean many of these things don't apply to civic organizations, local government, your churches, family, friend groups, relationships, right? It doesn't matter. But the key point is to take what is beneficial and that can positively help you, apply it as you will, right? It's all just good conversation between friends and colleagues. So, with that said, let's get started on correcting imbalance. I can think of, like right now, it's wintertime. And you can think of the seasons, right? What do the seasons do? The seasons are different, right? We've got summer, it's hot, cools down in the fall, really cools down in winter, warms up a little bit in the spring, really warms up in the summer, right? We got this ebb and flow, right? We have what? Variability, right? So we have variability in the seasons. And I'm only using that to frame, look, you got variability in days of the week, depending on your work, the type of work you do and the things that go on. You've got, you may have some certain meetings, you may have, projects you need to work on. You've got details to work out, planning, and you're all over the map, not to mention your personal lives too, right? And anything you're involved with outside of work and family. So you've got a myriad of variability going on, right? So who would be shocked, right, to think that we don't have to have an awareness about correcting when we're imbalanced, right? And also to keep in mind too that there isn't really a such thing as perfect balance, right? That whole notion that and you see this in social media, oh, they have the perfect life and this person's got that, just the whole, that craziness, right? Well, the reality is we know that everybody has their variability to deal with, and everybody has their own struggle in different areas, right? I know this time of year, I tend to be a snacker when it comes to being, a little more confined because of the cold, not completely confined, but when you're more so confined, I tend to be a little more snacky, right? Than I am when it's warm. And so what do you think that is? There's a imbalance probably in my diet, right? In that habit. And obviously in my fitness too is probably somewhat wonky as well, right? Now, going to the gym and doing all those kinds of things, we can offset that, especially when the climate's awful, but outside. But I'm just using these things as an example. It could just as easily be other examples, right? There could be things that are perturbing you emotionally, right? Intellectually, right? Media, right? Turn on the media. Watch anything media related, and just watch your stress, subconscious or conscious, start to go wonky all over the place. It's like, well, why am I so perturbed? I don't know why. Well, maybe it's because you're watching a bunch of hyperbolic stuff, right? So, doesn't say that it all is, but there's plenty of it, right? And that also drives what? Probably the snackiness for me, right? So how we deal with stress, right? And that also kind of gets back into our isms also, right? Which are also reflective of our imbalance, right? So many things we do, and then symptoms of what we do, and then things that are happening that we don't realize when you start peeling the onion back. But all of that said, obviously, as I throw all that at you, you can go, oh, wow, when I just think of this stuff, it makes my mind a little off kilter. exactly, right? If you were trying to, if you sat there and tried to make a list of all the wonkiness in your world, probably, right? Now, I'm not saying every day is like this, right? Or every season or every. But I am saying that we can get in pockets of this and we can get into long stretches of this, and then we can be affected by others too. So anyway, with that bit of an introduction, just talking generally about correcting imbalance, let's go to the big board. In All right, and we're back. All right, back to the big board here. So wanted to, and I got my markers here, or my dry erase, and I didn't warm them up, so hopefully they don't cause me grief. But so I'm going to try to warm them up. So if you hear them banging around, that's just me warming my dry erase up. Anyway, so back here at the big board. So we talked, a little quick intro on the correcting imbalance, right? So if you think about it, everything moves in kind of a wave, right? Everything moves in a wave. And as we said before, this wave is a variability, right? Get into Lean Six Sigma, go into a lot of that, into a lot of those areas. Okay. Variability, right? That could be the weather. That could be somebody else's mood. Could be all external things going on that are coming at you, right? And providing you all kinds of obstacles to navigate sometimes, right? But then in that navigation, obviously we have to learn to collaborate, right? And negotiate our way through in a healthy way, not in a kind of a greedy, selfish way. But we have to navigate those waters from the external. But we also got to remember too, we've got our own internal stuff going on too, right? So how is that external affecting our internal? And then what are we doing, right? So, and one of the ways, I don't know, visually to represent some of this is to just look at like a lever, or you can say like a teeter-totter. Let's see, like when we were kids. I guess they still call it a teeter-totter. I don't know. Change. Okay, so we got the ground here. So we have a teeter-totter, right? And the idea of say, balance is the concept that this can ever be perfectly level, right? Now, just the idea that perfection is something that's possible can be enough to create an imbalance, right? Because that's stress, right? And if you think about it, and I'm using this dotted red, can you see it? Hopefully you can see it. This red line right here, I'll just make it a straight up red line. We'll say that's perfectly balanced. Society would have you believe, right? The world would have you believe that perfect balance is possible. It's not, folks. It's just like excellence, right? It's the pursuit of balance. Because about the moment you hit a balance, something's always around the corner a day or two or a week or a month later, right? There's always some variability to adjust for. So we kind of have to have a loose grip on balance. We can't get to, because if we obsess over being perfectly balanced, that will actually force us to overcorrect on our teeter-totter, our lever here, right? And we will be in a constant state of overcorrection. We'll be shucking and jiving so much that we're never, it's calm, deliberate motions, movements, right? Decisions, responses, not reactions, right? But it's easy to think reactions because I just did, right? So again, no such thing as perfect, right? So that balance. So one of the things to keep in mind is the outside world thinks, oh, you know what, this is, and then they'll try to market and sell you that. Oh, if you buy this product, we know this because this has been, in America anyway, this has been part of Americana for decades, right? My entire life and well before. That it's, and some of this too is that false sense of balance can be us as Americans going, oh, well, we got it all together. No, we don't, folks. We never have it all together, and we know we don't, right? When it gets right down to it, we know it's effort to even get close to balance, right? And then where we are balanced, then we struggle with imbalance in other areas, right? You may be great, financially. You may be great healthy wise, but in health wise, but you may be all kinds of imbalance socially, right? You may be what they would call a pot stirrer, right? You may be a person ruffling feathers, or you may be a person having your feathers ruffled, and then that, how that affects you then creates imbalance, right? So you had the financial going, you had your health is on top of the world, but now you're maybe intellectually and emotionally just like, right? Off kilter, right? More off kilter than just being a little out of bounds, right? Because I guess it's safe to say, we could say, well, a little out of balance is fine. What is a little out of balance? Well, this is where it becomes very subjective, right? We would have to, now, if we were looking at this like performance, right? Now, if we, drawing this into the organizational culture, right? If we're looking at this as performance, no organization ever hits 100%, right? No organization ever hits 100%, and quite honestly, in America anyway, and I know this is a global thing too, but I'm just using America because that's where I happen to be standing right now. But no organization is perfect, okay? And because they're not perfect, if they're hitting 93%, that is almost perfection, okay? That's pretty doggone good. If all of their KPIs were relegated together, were all composited together, and you were hitting 93% or better, would be phenomenal, right? You'd almost have to go, I don't think so. I think there's probably something, you fudge the numbers, right? So when we pull that back, what's reasonable? I don't know, 90? I think 90 is reasonable, right? We're human beings, right? We're human beings, we're trying. We know there's no such thing as perfection, so 90%. So if you're asking me, well, what would an individual be? I don't know. Throw 90 in there. See how that feels. Work your way. Work your way toward 90. I think that's fair. You may never get to 90. I may never hit 90. I don't know where I'm at right now, right? I could be at 85, right? You will have to sit down and figure it out for yourself. Just rate yourself. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple thing. You can get down on a piece of paper and go, and 1 out of 10 or out of 100, however you want to do it, rate, how your emotions, your intellect, right? The moral side of life. How are things going from that perspective? Your health, right? Go down all the way, finances, all through the things, and start assigning them a number. And don't be unbiased about it, right? Don't, and then multiply those numbers together, right? Give yourself maybe, I don't know, probably 4 to 5 categories, significant ones that, big chunks, right? Multiply those together, and what do you get? You're probably gonna, most people are probably going to be in the 45, and remember, this is a composite, so don't freak out. What do you mean I'm 65% off balance or 55% off balance? Well, it could be, right? But, do the math and figure out, hey, and that's one easy way to kind of just go with it. And what does that mean? Well, create a baseline for yourself and say, okay, this is the criteria I'm going to use, boom. And I'm going to do this every month. And then just see how you go. But be honest, right? Be honest about it. And you might, give yourself more areas. So, play with that. Anyway, back to the show. Anyway, so we're going to be off balance. No such thing as 100%. No such thing as perfection. That being said, we know there's going to be a little fluctuations. We know that there's an internal component, right? There's the internal. And the external, right? Now, if you think about it, if I was to draw a bunch of these levers being, your other teammates, doesn't matter if we're talking about organizations, right? You can go through, you could create a composite score for people in your life too. Your organizations, the groups you're involved with, family groups, friends, all of it, right? Create the groups, the grouping, and do that same composite that I just talked about. And you can probably come up with a baseline. You could probably track how that flows for you, right? Oh, I need to work on my personal relationships with my family or my friends or my community or my clubs or my whatever, right? All the things. And, or just people in public, rate people in your community, your local community, like just your experience, right? Because remember, it's a bit subjective. We're all individually experiencing this life. It's not like your reality is going to be different than my reality by some variable, right? And I'm pretty sure there's math out there for that. But so we're not going to have the same experience, but we do have some shared experiences, right? And we do know that there are different groups. So we do know that that's true. So we can only base our life on what our experience is, right? So do this for you, and without, being so, don't get caught in a judgment trap. This isn't what it's about. It's about assessing, okay, what's the external world? How do I feel it's impacting me? How are you now impacting the world around you? That's a little bit harder to figure out, right? You're going to, that's definitely going to be subjective because, only others could tell you, right? But you could kind of give yourself a grade and just see where you're at. And where do those compare? Hey, I need to work on my game here. I need to interact more. I need to help people more. I need to contribute more. I need to do a little bit more. But keep in mind, remember, you could let these things worry you. And this is the thing I don't want anybody ever to be concerned about with my videos or anything you see online at all. Don't let the external push you into a panic, okay? Push you into over worrying because you can overthink, and that's going to set you off balance, right? You could overthink something and start getting worried about, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough in an area. If you're not good enough in an area, right, what do? Remember, calmly, decisively go, I think I'm just going to do a little bit more and do a little, and give some attention to this. Remember, any kind of real quick, hasty thing is probably not going to stick, right? Now, I can tell you this, organizationally, I developed a system to help you to get past a lot of the easy stuff, when I say easy, not really easy, but the low-hanging fruit, to a sustainability that allows you to be in control organizationally or professionally, right? And so when we say quick, it's relative. Now, quick for you may be, oh my gosh, tomorrow I need to do a thing. Quick for somebody else may be, in 6 months we need to do a thing. I've seen organizations where they think they're going fast if they get something implemented in a year, right? Now, I don't mean like fully implemented, because depending on how big they are, I get that. I'm talking about to really get going, right? So, sense of urgency, yes, we don't want to put ourselves in panic, but we also want to have a little sense of urgency, right? Because we don't want things to be negative in our life, but we also don't want that reaction or our attention to it to also compound, right, other areas that were throwing us off balance. See how that goes? You have buckets. You don't want to steal from one bucket so that you overfill another, and then it sets you off balance further in that area, right? So if I get smarter, but it's to the detriment of my finances, right? Now I can tell you guys this because I lived this, okay? Now it's subtle. My imbalance at times have been so much self-awareness that I go, oh, this, oh, that, and I have been there in the past. So when I tell you these things, it's because I'm aware of it. I've walked in these shoes, okay? And I went, and even to the extent now, I can also say that some of these things, it's often said that within the poison, right, which I'm basically saying this was my poison, right? This was my thing, is that I was like, oh my gosh, this is off kilter, that's off kilter, whatever. Within the poison is the antidote, right? The antidote is to what? Now be aware of these things so that you can calmly make adjustments, right? Now, I have the added benefit of being a little more mature in years now, right? But 2 decades ago, I would have been like, oh, hey, let's go do the thing, bing, right? I might have just gone for it, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean it would have hurt anybody else, but it may have pinned me down, over, have you heard of overgiving? Yeah, got the shirt, the sweatsuit, and the whole wardrobe of overgiving. How long do you have to overgive until you learn the lesson of overgiving, right? Anything to excess is an imbalance, right? It isn't just the isms, alcoholism, drug addictions, all these things. Those are obvious to us, right? But hey, obsessive compulsive, and I've even said on these videos, my mom was OCD, right? Not diagnosed. She didn't have to be. She probably wrote a book about it. But as she got much older, much older, that started to fade because even I think she realized she was running herself ragged, right? So we want to be careful that we're have a sense of urgency, but we're in balance, right? As much as possible, right? Not perfect, near perfection, but as good as we can be. In balance so that we don't what? We don't become out of balance in other areas. You can think of it like a wheel, right? You can think of it like a wheel. Okay. Yes, I'm not going to sing. Okay. Can you see this? Yeah. So think of, now, you would never get in a car with a wheel like that, right? But that's what would be if you're out of balance. Your wheel is elongated. It could be that way. It could be, well, that's just an example. It's elongated, right? And so it's out of balance, right? You go in to get your vehicle worked on. What do? They balance your wheels, So you're not hoppity-boppity down the road, right? So you have a smooth ride, okay? So get the wheels in balance. Same thing, get our teeter-totter or the wheels of our life in balance. And pick an area. Let's see how good of a circle I can do. It's not too bad. I don't almost drive on that tire. Okay, get your wheel in balance. Not to say that is the definition of balance, but, get the wonk out of your wheel, right? But when you do this in different areas, so what does that mean? What does this mean in an application sense? Well, first of all, have the understanding. You're dealing with others and their impact on you and then yourself. And then that, as we've talked about in other videos, triangulates out into the world again, right? So we're all just a bunch of billiard balls on a pool table, right? So the thing you can control is how you let things affect you that you receive, whether, through your senses, what you hear, what you see, what's said to you, what's said about you, all these things, right? All the things. Are you taking it so personally, right? And this is hard, folks. This isn't easy. I don't want to sugarcoat and say, oh, this is a snap. There's a reason why we can't hit perfection, okay? It's because it's not easy in every area, right? There's some areas that just work, right? Like our health, that's just like, every day being, disciplined. That's just, constancy over time, right? We can do that. Now we can drop the ball, but we can pick it back up again. But it's so hard if, say a communication sense, something comes at you and then you fire something else off, right? And then now you can't reel that stuff back in, right? And so oftentimes, some of the imbalance is when we look back and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Who hasn't done that? I remember being a kid. It's like, oh, a girl come up and said something to me and I said something stupid. Just the movies don't lie. When you're a kid, anything like that, the movies don't lie. Boys, we're young, tongue-twisted little nitwits. And anything that comes out of our mouth is unintelligible, right? So, and then after the fact go, oh my gosh, I could have said this, I could have said that, I should have, whatever, right? And then the girl's just like, okay, whatever. And now it was a kid, right? Who hasn't also done this somewhere along in your life, just reacted, And you also got to keep in mind too, some people don't have a sense of humor. so you may react sarcastically, not in a negative sense, but just kind of delight in the mood. And somebody else may be serious as can be. And all of a sudden they're just thrown completely out of whack, right? You may be as balanced as can be. And you weren't trying to throw them out of whack, but they were in such a serious state, right? that they weren't even able to see the problem as an opportunity to fix, or the problem to, now, don't get me wrong, sometimes there's a cost, right? And we don't want to laugh at things that are at a cost to others, but sometimes you have to kind of let the air out of the balloon a little, and just kind of have to laugh. And then it allows you to center yourself, right? This is the beautiful thing, and this is an extra here, a freebie, if you will, is that if you're ever kind of in this overthinking, overfeeling, over worrying about what did I say, watch a comedy, and just remember, look, folks, this life that we're living, it's a maze. It's a maze. It's a puzzle. It's a class, right? Don't stress about the pass or fail. Just perform the best you can, but keeping as much balance as you possibly can without what? Without panicking and worrying and overstressing about the details, or the thought that you could be perfect. Just recently, there was a Christmas movie. Oh gosh, her name escapes me, and I'm a huge fan. But anyway, she was a mom of a fair-sized family. It was a recent movie. I think it was on Netflix. And the family, and she just did everything for, you talk about overgive, right? The whole setup was that she was an overgiver, and she wanted to be voted to go on this one show, right? Why am I telling you this? Anyway, we'll come back to that in a second. Anyway, and her kids, and they just didn't even think twice, right? They were completely unaware. I don't even know why I told you that. But one of the things about it is that she was definitely over obsessing about trying to make everything perfect for Christmas and for this and for that, and nobody else, gave to her, or helped her, or regarded her. So you also have to ask yourself, what are your motives? Are you trying to be balanced or achieve some kind of perfection for the outward appeal, right? If you're trying to do that, right, there's a dirty word I'm about to say, and right, a dirty word, a very dirty word. Don't turn it off though, because this is an acceptable dirty word. If you are, I got to do this one in red. If you are doing anything for validation, there is no bigger red flag, maybe I should make a big red flag, on your teeter-totter, okay? No bigger red flag, backwards 4, as validation. If you're expecting somebody else to validate who you are you good enough, you're not good enough, or we don't think you're good enough, or this or that, or all the things, right? Oh, you believe this? Oh, well, you don't measure up. And it doesn't even have to be that people say anything. It could be the inference, right? It could be, oh, well, so-and-so, and these kinds of things, right? If you're doing anything for validation, that's how you know you're off kilter, that you're out of balance. If you can't be in a room by yourself, if you can't be alone to be able to just be at peace, if you need somebody else, right? And I'm going to use this as it could be somebody or an organization. This kind of goes into a different segment. So I'm going to wipe the board off, pause it here. I'm going to wipe the board off, come right back. And we're back. Okay, got the board all cleaned off. All right, so back to our lever of life. Right? So, and I just had up here validation, so I'll put this back up here because this will be the last of it, folks. We're about almost done. Kind of wanted to go over some of these things with you and just create an awareness for your benefit. Okay. So let's say this is all of your life, or whatever. Pick an area, or your entire life, whatever. And you're right here. Hey, that's me. And you need somebody or something or a bunch of somebodies. This could be a communal thing. This could be like the entire community. This could be your church. This could be your organization. This could be a bunch of family and friends. If you need all of them to validate you, to get you to what you think, or if you're buying into, I'm not balanced unless somebody else tells me I'm balanced, or political parties, all these things, right? All of it, folks. If you're requiring something else to validate your opinions, who you are, all those things, then that's how you know you're out of whack. That's how you know you're out of whack. You could also say, this could also be the equivalence to brainwashing, right? You believe as we do, or you're out, right? Remember, we talked about the in group and the out group in a previous video or two. So this is a red flag, and this could be in any area of your life, right? This could be you also gaslighting yourself, right? This is why I say, if you're overthinking, this is what you're doing. You're giving credence to somebody else's opinion of you, judging yourself backwards through the lens, looking at yourself. You're sitting next to yourself going, hey, that whole thing they used to have in shows and movies where the good angel and the good angel on one side, the devilish angel on the other, whatever, the devil on the other side. And essentially going, yeah, you shouldn't, and it was basically a carbon copy of you. That's essentially what you're doing, right? You're allowing that, that the devilish side of you to judge you and to hold you account, and or create something that isn't there. This could be that, hey, there's an injustice here, right? And then I can't have balance until I find justice for X, Y, or Z, right? And this could also be social things too. If you get bought into any groupthink, right? You bought into groupthink, you could be running down the road, always thinking you're out of balance until you create some kind of justice. No, you've got to create balance in your own life, and then you can help others in a very cogent, deliberate way, right? Not in a because more often than not, you're going to overcorrect and you're going to probably hurt other people in the process. Here's how you know if you're helping and if it's, if your help is helping, right? And it may not be helping. It may be just that you're trying and it's not received. That's fine, whatever. Live life, move on. Don't worry about it. But if you're helping a person, means you have to hurt another to help this one, that's how you know that's another big red flag, okay? or it could be, I'm hurting this group, right? This is why is your opinion based on what other people are telling you to say, and then if you don't think or say these things, you won't be accepted. You gotta see where you're at, right? You gotta measure where you're at. Don't get panicky. Just make an adjustment if you need to adjust, right? Be cogent, be balanced. Afford other people the opportunity to succeed and fail and to have opinions that maybe aren't yours, and maybe they don't have the information you have, and their journey to discover is their journey to discover. You do what you can do. But for anyone to jump on somebody else's, or for anyone to need somebody else, but also for others to feel like they are empowered to jump on your lever, your teeter-totter to balance you because you're out of whack, huge red flag. All right, folks, I think we've had enough teeter-totter for today. Remember to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only helping to transform culture, but we're transforming our own lives. But remember, we can't transform anything on the outside unless we're willing to transform on the inside, right? Super important. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.